click, click, click. Hello everyone, and welcome to Iona Beach Park. My name is Takekayo, and I'm here to review the brand new Fujifilm XF 70-300 f4 to 5.6 telephoto lens. So let's start the review now. So when Fujifilm told me about the 70-300mm lens, I wasn't super excited about it. It's a decent focal length. Fujifilm already has their mighty 100-400 lens, but they did tell me that this isn't an entry-level lens, but it's considered a higher-end lens in that it actually takes the teleconverter. So as you can see, I have the 1.4 times teleconverter on here. I have this on the XS10. This has Ibis, but as well, the lens has OIS as well, and so you get pretty reasonably stabilized images as long as your subject is not moving too much. But if so, all you have to do is up the ISO on this. But back just in behind me here, there's some birds that they're nesting, and so this is kind of a protected area for migratory birds. And so I think there's a lot of photographers. I saw a few of them over there with scopes, not necessarily taking pictures, but this is a popular area for birders. And so I thought I would bring the 70-300. I am gonna kind of move around this area here. I'm gonna see if I can take some photos over there, but I've been out here for about an hour and I've been having a pretty good time. It's really well stabilized. The balance of this lens on the XS10 makes a lot of sense. I weighed the XT4 with the 100-400 as well as the XS10 with the 70-300, and almost half the weight with something like this. So if weight is a big issue for you, I think that getting something like this is a great alternative to the 100-400. Even if you're hiking or if you're climbing or something like that, I think it's just like just over 1100 grams with this kit. And then when you add the 1.4 times teleconverter, it still doesn't weigh a lot. And so I'm gonna keep on shooting with this, and I'll check in with you a little bit later. I thought just for comparison, I'd show you the 100-400 lens here versus the 70-300. So it's quite a significant size difference in diameter, in size, in weight. The filter thread is 77 on this one, and it's 67 on the 70-300. And so I just compared just quickly the autofocus performance. The 100-400 definitely. The autofocus tends to hunt less than this one here with the teleconverter especially. It tends to kind of go far and close and then it'll lock in, where this one seems to just kind of lock in right away. Now when you're out at 400, I mean, look at this beast. Look at how beastly this looks. It takes up almost the entire frame here of my camera. And then this is the 70-300, and this also telescopes at 300, so it's not like it's tiny. It still goes out that far so it's 300 5.6. This is 400mm f5.6. But when you put that 1.4 times teleconverter, which is on the bottom right here, when you put that on here, you are getting 450mm f8, and so you are slower at the far end there. But again, it's the weight that's gonna, I think it's gonna be the deciding factor between the 100 and the 400. If you're gonna be on a tripod all the time anyways, and you know, you're going from your car and you're just walking a few feet, I think this lens is great, because remember, this lens also works with the 1.4 times and the 2 times teleconverter. In terms of build quality, the 100-400 definitely comes with a tripod collar here, which is really nice because again of its size and weight. This one here, this doesn't really need it. It's reasonably light enough that you can go off the weight of the body. And then having the different features there, like focus control, 5 meters to infinity, or the full focal length. Right guys, so we are losing light very quickly. I've been shooting with this for about a couple of hours out here, and so far so good. When you're out in a big wide open space like this and you're trying to get a little bit of telephoto, I think having the 1.4 times teleconverter is actually really nice. 70-300 is still a good range, and that's kind of the advantage of having something in APS-C, because what you are getting basically an equivalent of full frame is you're getting like a 105-450, which is a really good range for something this small. And again, having it on a camera body like the XS10 in combination with the 70-300 and the 1.4 times teleconverter, this is a great kit here for birding, for anything kind of telephoto. I think even some types of kind of sports action, wildlife, as long as you crank up the ISO, I think you are fine. And in terms of image quality, I haven't even looked at these images, so I might kind of do a part B to this when I get back into my studio. And as well, I am going to try to do a little bit of kind of urban for like street photography, but you know, 70-300 is not a great lens for street photography. I'm gonna keep on shooting with this, but so far I've been having a really good time. It's cold, and I wonder how this would work in the summer or the changing of seasons. And if you are a birder, I mean, having something light like this, being able to hand hold most of your images without having to use a tripod, I think this is definitely a great advantage to have something like this. And this is definitely light enough to put on a strap and have it around your neck. And so as I keep on shooting with this, and then I'll embed some pictures, maybe we'll see you back in my studio. We'll talk to you later. All right, so I have finished reviewing the XF 70-300mm with the XS10 out on the streets of Vancouver at Iona Beach Regional Park, as well as Chinatown. I shot at night, as well as I went to a bridge and took photos of boats. Also had time to edit through all the photos and process some of them, zoom in, take a close look, and so I have my overall feel of having this lens for about a week. So let's start that portion now. Actually, something I wanted to show first is at what points do the apertures change. And so at 70mm, it is at f4, and I'll tell you, I'm looking at the screen, and there you go, it turns to f4.5, and then let's keep on turning this, and now it's at f5, and then finally, let's see when it switches. There we go, you're at 5.6. I also forgot to mention previously about the lens lock here. You know that when you walk around with it and the camera is kind of face downwards, the lens does tend to kind of creep. Now, I didn't lock it, and I didn't notice that it creeped down very often, but this is a new lens, and over time, this might kind of loosen up. So what you can do is lock the lens like that, and now it doesn't creep, right? There you go. As much as I pull it, it doesn't creep. But if you do just turn the zoom, it will automatically unlock itself. You know, those of you that use these super telephoto lenses and you're walking around, you know how irritating it is when the lens just starts to kind of creep down. So it is nice that they have this locking feature, but itself unlocks when you zoom. So my number one pro about this lens is really price performance. For $799 US, the closest within the Fujifilm ecosystem is the 100-400 lens. That lens is much bigger, it's much more expensive. And at $1,900, and this is $799, it's less than half the price, but you're not getting half the performance. And the fact that you can actually use these teleconverters with this lens here, if you already have these teleconverters and you already have the 100-400 or you have the 50-140 f2.8, being able to stick these teleconverters on here when you need a light solution but you also want that super telephoto pull, I think this is a really good option. Now this lens being a 70-300 in the APS-C format, and this is where you get the advantage of a crop sensor, is when you go super telephoto. So 70-300 works out to 107 to 457 millimeter. And as I said previously, having a lens that was approaching 500 millimeter
back in the film days. They're typically primes and very expensive. And to be able to get that kind of a pull power, just this lens alone is amazing. And at 580 grams, this is the same weight as the 55 to 200, but now you're getting 70 to 300. And so extra bonus for being light, compact, and reasonably priced. They also give you some of the pro features. Like I mentioned, you do get the lens lock. You do have the focus limiter here. So if you are shooting things far away, there's no need to have it all the way. As you can see, I already have it in the 5 meters to infinity. So that's awesome. And the filter thread is only 67 millimeters instead of 77 millimeters on the 100 to 400. So it's easy to adapt. I have a lot of 72 mil filters, and so just get a step down range from 72 to 67. I can use all my polarizers and neutral density filters on this lens, no problems. My biggest con, and it's not specifically to this lens, but sort of to a lot of zoom lenses, and this is a varifocal or varifocal zoom lens. So it's not a true zoom. A true zoom is a parfocal, which means basically if you zoom in and you manually focus and then you zoom back out, the focus doesn't shift. Now this focus shifts, and the problem with that is when you are at super telephoto that you're trying to find birds or something like that, and you can't find it because you're way too zoomed in, so you zoom out to 70 to try to find the bird, and as soon as you find it, you zoom back in, the focus is constantly shifting, and I found that I did miss a lot of photographs because of that. Now that's just the nature of a varifocal type zoom lens, and that's also an issue with having a super telephoto, and it's easy to lose your subject. So I would say it's just a matter of practice. I think if you're good at bird photography, you're good at whatever type of photography, when you're completely zoomed in, you probably like, what are you talking about, Take? I can find my subjects perfect. And so for you, that's awesome. For me, I struggled a little bit, but to get this kind of compact size and weight as well as a zoom, I think that varifocal lens design is the most efficient. But if they could have made it a parfocal design, I would have been happier. As I was editing through and processing these images, I did take photos of things that had a lot of detail, and when I zoomed out and wide open, I did find that the micro contrast, like it wasn't as contrasty as I wanted it. I always have to kind of bump up the contrast on a lot of the images, and clarity as well. And in terms of sharpness, it's when you zoom out, especially when you add the teleconverters, it's obviously not going to be as sharp as the native lens on its own. And so I did find that it's reasonably sharp and it's easy enough to just kind of sharpen the images in post. And compare that to the 100 to 400, that lens is much sharper and the micro contrast is much better. But again, you're carrying 2.5 times the weight, you're paying 2.5 times the price. And so the trade-off for something this small and compact, I say it's still worth it. So my overall shooting experience with this lens was great. I mean, on the XS10 and the 70-300, just this combo together here, and you do bird photography, you need a super telephoto, you're doing landscapes, and you're cropping in really tight. For the price that you pay for both of these, so I think $9.99 US for the XS10 body, $7.99 for the lens, and the total weight of these two together, I walked around in Chinatown, I did some street photography work. I didn't put a strap on this, so I just kind of had this in my hand, walked around, reasonably compact, didn't feel weird carrying this lens, it didn't seem too big. In fact, the weight of this lens is less than the 16 to 55 f2.8, but a little bit more than my 16 to 80 f4. So walking around all day with this, and this big grip on the XS10 felt very comfortable. Obviously, I wouldn't recommend this lens for street photography. I was pretty much stuck at 70 millimeters, and I wouldn't recommend this lens to do portraiture, although you can do street photography, you could do portraiture with this, but it's just not really ideal for that. But if you are in the market for a lens like this, you have the 55 to 200, thinking about upgrading, but kind of didn't want to go with the 100 to 400 for price, size, and weight, I think this is a really good option because you can use these teleconverters now on this lens, and if you ever have a need for more pull power to be able to pull things in that are really far away, then there is no cheaper option within the Fujifilm ecosystem. So thank you Fujifilm Canada for sending me an early pre-production copy. This isn't typically the type of lens I would shoot with, but I did have fun going out and taking pictures of birds and boats. Oh, and one sort of thing to mention is that when you are shooting with super telephoto, having OIS as well as having Ibis is great. When I was on that bridge, the bridge shook a lot and I didn't realize how much it was shaking. So just remember, the image stabilization doesn't stabilize your subject, it stabilizes you and where you're at. And if you're on a bridge and the bridge is shaking and you're way out super telephoto, so every little bit that you shift, it's like a foot of movement on whatever you're shooting. I think it was good to leave both the OIS and the Ibis on, let the computer decide how to stabilize it. And so I recommend ISO 800 at least, even during the daytime, and leave the Ibis and the OIS on. That's it. Don't forget to subscribe. Check out my other videos. Thank you so much for watching and happy shooting.